How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ruffle Rowlett, and welcome back to a brand new video, guys. Today, we got actually two really fun things to talk about. We've got ourselves Corocoro information, yes. Now, I don't know if I should call it Corocoro leaks or just Corocoro in general, but we do have Corocoro information nonetheless that I think will be really fun to talk about. So, sit back, relax, grab yourself a beverage, and let's get started. So, guys, we're starting things off with this right here. So, yes, Corocoro, for those of you guys who do not know, is a Japanese magazine. It's a Japanese, newsletter of sorts almost. That they kind of release. It's like a magazine, okay? For those you who are out there who don't know what that is, if you're too young to know what that is, basically, it's a book that has information and stuff in it. And guess what? We have one right behind me, actually, over here. I do have a Corocoro. It's this one right here. But basically, Corocoro is a magazine that comes out, and Game Freak is oftentimes very much featured in it. In the past, not so much anymore in the last few years, but in the past, in like the past years, we actually used to get Corocoro leaks, right? Like leaks from Corocoro would happen, where basically these pages, these scans of Corocoro, before they would come out, somebody would actually get pictures of them and then leak them on the internet, and that would give us leaks for upcoming Pokemon, like, you know, they're going to be shown off. So, for example, we'd get leaks for new legendaries, megas, whatever else was happening, and this is massive back in, like, the 2010s, the era before the 2000 to 2010s, basically that time frame. Very, very popular. Happened all the time. And guess what? We have some stuff now, also for Pokemon Legends ZA. Now, this isn't necessarily a leak, okay? You could call it a leak if you want to, because I don't know where it's coming from. If it's officially out already, I don't know, because I don't have the most recent issue of Corocoro on me. But you can call it a leak, you can call it not a leak, you can just call it actual Corocoro scans. I think that's better to call it, but doesn't really matter. Point is that we do have some stuff, though, that was posted by Moot Monthly, who basically said, this month's Corocoro magazine featured a 2-page article on the upcoming Game Freak title, Pokémon Legends ZA. And we have these 2 pages. Of course, in the actual image here, we see stuff we've seen already before. Nothing too crazy. We have the Legends ZA logo, a bunch of text. It says 2025 on the top there as well. So again, nothing too crazy on on first look. We have also, I think, just again, screenshots from the actual trailer for the most part, and some text that says some things. The second image, however, is more fun, because here we actually have Mega, Mega Garchomp and Mega Salamence, as well as Yveltal, Xerneas, and Zygarde, which is pretty nice. Now, I will say, there is a translation here that has been given by Moot, and we're going to look again at these images themselves, like, we're going to take a deeper look on them, but there was a translation given by Moot. Now, I must point out, according to 2 people that I talked to, that I know, Jan as well as Tommy, it does seem like some of this stuff in this listing. So what I'm about to read, don't take it as actually being 100% confirmed, real and or fake or whatever. It might be mistranslated, okay? Just keep that in mind. But the stuff here, the interesting excerpts from the article as posted by Moot, some of these points could be false. Just keep that in mind. They could be not false as in they're trying to mislead, but rather they could be mistranslated. And the biggest one is actually the last point here, which is Corocoro says, tune in for next month's report next month, or like new information next month. Now, that's not actually confirmed. That is a little bit mistranslated, I think. But yeah, so in terms of what the points say here, a couple of points of interest. Corocoro once again reiterates that this is a new Lumio city, different from previous one from X and Y. I believe this point is actually accurate, and I also know that for a fact is true, which also, again, confirms if even Corocoro are listing this, which sure, it is just an article by a different company. It isn't Game Freak at the end of the day writing it necessarily. But Corocoro and Pokemon Company are very, like, close-knit, okay? Very close-knit companies. Which actually why is I'm going to bring up and actually take you on a little journey with a real Corocoro magazine. So here we go. Let's get a Corocoro magazine. Oh, and all my shit fell. Nice. So this right here is Corocoro, right? This is a Corocoro magazine. It's still wrapped in. But as you can see, there's literally a special book in the back here, like a little guidebook almost, for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I got this while in Japan. I got this from the Pokemon Center, by the way. They sold these in the Pokemon Center, because this is pretty much what I mean. The Pokemon Company and Corocoro are very, very, very close-knit. Like, they're a very close-knit, like, set of companies. They work very close together, and it wouldn't surprise me if there is some, like, crossover there in the companies as well, because I think Takara Tomy, which is the company that makes a bunch of Pokemon merchandise and toys, they're actually the ones who own Corocoro, if I'm not mistaken. So it makes sense that they would have some connection to none else than Nintendo and the Pokemon Company. I mean, come on. They're literally like, their main producers of Pokemon toys in Japan. This thing is Takara Tomy and Bandai Namco. Either way, point is this. starting things off, the fact that they're also reiterating here that this is a new Lumio City should pretty much confirm to you that yes, we are going to just Lumio City. People keep like expecting that we're going to be going to all of Kalos. We're not. They've literally officially said it. Nintendo officially have said it, and I don't understand why there's still an argument about this. We are just in Lumios, and I know that again, people are like, but Lumios, oh, that's not going to be a fun game. It's just one city. Ooh, remember. Not the same Lumios from X and Y. There's a different Lumios. This is a new version of Lumios that's going to be big. Think of like the Spider-Man games in the PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4, right? Any of the Spider-Man games. They're only set in one city. They're only set in one freaking city, right? They're only set in New York, I think, right? So you don't actually have like a whole country to explore. You just have one city, but that city has been made in such good detail and so large that one singular city feels massive, which is exactly what it's supposed to feel like. Same thing with Lumio City. Lumio City in X and Y is already pretty freaking big. Like, it's actually pretty large to start with. But imagine now if they just spent all their time making a epic city for a singular game instead of making all these extra wild areas that don't really matter. Like, just the city itself can be massive. And Corocoro also pointed out that there is a bunch of wild Pokemon throughout the city, which, I'm reiterating here. This information, these translations right here, could be incorrect, and I'm going to be reading another post that kind of clarifies some of the points, but nonetheless, Corocoro points out that there's a bunch of wild Pokemon all throughout the city, which, again, is either them just pointing out what they saw in the trailer, or something they already know that we do not know. Either way, that's one of the things, and of course, this would make sense. Like, how would we catch Pokemon? Well, they would just run around the city, right? We'd find them in, like, little areas. Like, if you guys remember from the actual, like, if you open up the post right here, if you open up the image, right, in a new tab, if you open up this image in a new tab, right, boom. So if we go to this image right here, you guys remember from the map, like down here, the actual map of Pokémon Legends ZA, you see those circles, right? All those little circles in the middle. There's like 5 of them. That's what I think personally is going to be the wild areas, the zones where you're going to find a lot of Pokemon will be right there. I think the whole city is going to have Pokemon in it, but I think those specific points, those specific 5 points in the map, and I don't know if my mouse here is like showing you what I'm talking about, but basically I'm talking about these 5 circles here. I think those will be actually the places you go to get all these Pokemon battles. But either way, moving on throughout the rest of this, translation point list, it says Megas from X and Y and Oras are returning. Now, this is actually weird because this one could be true, given the fact that we have the Mega Salamans being shown off in the second image of the Corocoro post, which, yeah, I think this translation could be accurate. I'm not sure, but it would make sense. Also, that would be cool because originally people were thinking, oh, we might not get Oras Megas in Legends ZA and we might just only get the X and Y Megas, which if true would suck donkey dolls. But I think we're going to be getting both. I think it makes sense that we get both. And hey, it seems like that's what they're telling us. It says also that the lore of the Mega Evolution will be explored again, which again, sounds pretty awesome. Corocoro points out Zygarde similarities to the game's logo, which, okay, I mean, that is not that crazy. We already kind of know that. The adventure is set in Lumio City, but we'll be able to meet the legendaries of the Kalos. Wait, but will we be able to meet the legendaries of the Kalos region? So this is more of a question rather than an actual answer. And then Corocoro says, stay tuned for the next report next month, which, again, I doubt that that's what, like, that, I don't think that means that we're guaranteed to get news next month, though next month is May. Let's not forget about it. It is May, and May is the time frame for Pokemon to give news. May and June are good time frames for Pokemon to give us information and news. Even if small, it is usually the time frame to give us actual information. So, just gonna say it. There's a possibility we could get something. It's always a possibility, right? That's where I'm gonna put that. But yeah, as for the images themselves, now let's actually dissect the images themselves as to what we see. First of all, the top part is just the logo. Them again clarifying it's 2025. Now there is this little inkling of a thingy up here that says Nintendo Switch and then 2025 as to what console it's gonna be on. And I know some people have been arguing like, is this game going to be on Nintendo Switch 2? Is it going to be on the next console? First of all, they wouldn't list Nintendo Switch 2 as a console because it's not even announced. It doesn't exist yet, technically, right? We don't know about it. We just speculate about it. So they wouldn't list it for that reason. 2, it wouldn't make sense for Pokemon to shove this game onto the next Switch as well. It just doesn't make sense. Again, I wouldn't mind if they did that. I wouldn't mind if they did like a little bit of backwards compatibility shit and they did a Legends ZA version that was also released on the Switch 2. That would be sick. They've never done it before, and I know that we can argue, like, and again, usually I am the one who argues tradition. I'm always the one who says, no, they follow everything in this specific order, and if they do anything out of that order, it's a fluke, it's not a standard. But here's the thing. There's a chance that we could get this thing popping up on the next console. There's always a chance. no guarantees. I think it's highly unlikely, but you never know, okay? You never know. You never know with this stuff, okay? You never know. Nonetheless, though, the rest of this, if we just scroll down, it's just the image of Lumio City, a screenshot of Pikachu just running, and then again, the map. The second image is more interesting to me. Again, it's them reiterating the whole Mega thing, even pointing out the Mega logo, and then bringing up, like, the Oras, Oras and X and Y Megas. And then, of course, talking about Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde, and if all of them will be showing up, with, of course, Zygarde in its 50% form and all that. So, again, nothing too crazy to say about that, but, again, it's pretty awesome. Also, shout out to PoriLeaks, by the way, for also sharing this post. But, yeah, again, this is not like 100% guaranteed that these points are accurate. I'm just going to point that out right now. Also, Sol had a few things to say. He said, so some big details about Pokemon Legends Z have been revealed from this month's Corocoro. It really does feel like it's 2014 again. Thanks so much to Moot and Razenburst for translating this. The first 3 points are especially interesting. Different universe from X and Y, possibly. And this makes it seem like Mega Evolution lore will probably play a huge role in the plot. Much more speculation to come. Which, yes, I think there is probably a lot that can be said about that. Also, Pokisutami did have this point to say here, saying, too curious, let's wait for further news. I think this is the part that has been misworded and confused in a prior translation. Nowhere does it say next month. I think the other translator just assumed that there will be more ZA coverage in the next month's Corocoro. But yeah, so this is the point, like, this is the actual point where I guess in their points there, they were trying to say, like, oh, this is what confirms, like, new news next month. But rather, I think it's literally what it says is, too curious, let's wait for further news. But nowhere does it actually say next month. I don't think they at any point said, like, next month is going to be guaranteed news. However, let's not look at it from that perspective. Let's look at it from what have they done in the past. They have announced stuff in May. They've given us news in May. They've given us release dates. They've given us, box arts. Like, they give us box arts for BDSP and Legends Arceus, I think. I think they give us the release dates or box arts or something like that in May of 2022. I think was it 2022 or 2021? I think it was 2022. Yeah, 2022. They gave us the box arts, right? Oh no, 2021. Jeez, man, time is going so fast. I'm not even keeping up anymore. Oh my lord. I think I'm correct. Am I correct? I think I'm getting the dates wrong here. I am getting the years wrong. Doesn't matter. My point is that they have given us actual stuff in May and June before. So it just means that it is a possibility for it. And I wouldn't discount. I wouldn't be like, oh, guys, it's not happening just because whatever. Point is, there is a chance. And now that Corocoro is back at it again, it would be nice if we did get some actual... Again, Corocoro no longer is just a physical thing. Like, they don't do them just physically like this. They also post their stuff online, which means that, like, there's a less of a chance of stuff leaking necessarily. But they still do physical copies, okay? So we can't, like, act as if, like, this isn't a chance that some of the stuff, like, in these would actually leak. And also, shit, my copy is actually opened up. Like, the plastic is opened up. I wanted to keep this sealed forever. But, yeah, I guess it's opened up a little bit. But, yeah, no. It's really sick, by the way. Definitely get yourself a Corocoro if you ever go to Japan. That's what I did. Point is that, like, these magazines still come out. So there's always a chance that they could always drop, some leaks from there. Like, there could always be a chance for it. Especially, like, because I don't know what it is, but, like, the fact that we're back to Kalos again, it just makes everything feel like we're back to Kalos. Even the time we're in, right? Because, like, it reminds everybody of, like, 2013 when we got all the X and Y leaks from Corocoro, the fake Corocoro leaks, and all that kind of shit. Like, it just feels like we're back to that era. And that's why I even tweeted out, like, hey, guys... I can't believe it. It's like we have the Corocoro leak season back again. It's like that's how it feels like. Again, of course, these aren't necessarily leaks. These were officially revealed, I guess, and officially posted. And it's not like we have anything in here in these posts that is massive. Okay, there's no massive information in here. But it's interesting nonetheless to talk about. It's interesting to cover. And as I said, we do have some things that might get translated again a bit later. But right here, for example, we have Pokisutami, who translated a few things, saying, for example, a super quick note: Nintendo Switch scheduled for release 2025, price unknown. So at least according to Corocoro article, Pokemon Legends ZA will be indeed on Switch, but that's not really confirming much since the possibility of it being available on Switch 2 will obviously not be announced before the actual console itself, of course. And even if Corocoro knows this information, they would not be able to say so yet. Exactly, yes. It doesn't really make sense for them to announce it any earlier than that. It just wouldn't make sense. But yeah, that's pretty much that. Let's go over to the next thing, which is Jan. And this is Jan giving a kind of a little bit of their own translation and correction of some of the stuff from that original post. Basically what it says, I read through the 2 pages. Only 2 lines in this image are accurate to what understood from Corocoro images. Whoever made this post did a very poor job, but actually may have been spreading misinformation. But again, let's look at what it says. Corocoro once reiterates that this is new Lumio City, different from the previous one from X and Y. I didn't see anything regarding this statement. All I saw was that what we've seen in the trailer, saying the game is about Lumio City urban redevelopment plan, nothing more. Okay, fair enough. Corocoro points out that there's a bunch of wild Pokemon throughout the city. The word wild isn't even seen in those 2 pages. Are we just making stuff up? Megas from X and Y and ORAS returning, although I agree this is very likely. Nothing in this image confirms any returning Pokemon or forms. Mega Garchomp and Mega Salamence were merely brought up as an example for explaining what is Mega Evolution. Okay, fair enough. The lore of Mega Evolution will be explored again. Corocoro points out similarities of Zygarde to the game's logo. Only these 2 lines, from what I've understood, is accurate to what I read from the 2 Corocoro pages. The lore of Mega Evolution will be explored again. Okay. Well, see, even that's a little bit interesting, that they would bring up the fact that the lore will be re-explored. I don't know. A bit odd. Anyway, the adventure is set in Lumio City. We will be able to meet the legendaries of the Kalos region. From what I understand, is saying this is saying Lumio City is a city in X and Y. Okay, and then the following part says tells me adventure is set based on Adventure is set based on Pokemon X and Y, okay? And Corocoro stays tuned in for the next report next month. Nothing in the image suggests next month or next issue. This part shown here only translates to stay tuned for further news, but nothing mentioned when the next news will happen. Fair enough. And finally, I'm sorry if I sound too harsh, but I don't like people talking and spreading misinformation. That's fair enough. So again, this is what I meant by I wanted to talk about those first few points and then kind of go back in here and sort of correct it from what Jan actually had to say. However, the stuff that is mentioned, though, does make sense. Even if this is mistranslation, a lot of the stuff would make sense. One, again, the game being set entirely within Lumio City. This is something that I don't need to ask Jan. I don't need to ask Mood. I don't need to look at Corocoro. I can just go to Nintendo. I can go to the official Nintendo of America account. I think it's them, or the Nintendo of Europe. I don't know which one it is. Might be Nintendo of Europe now, because... And I think they might have removed it by now, but... they used to have it pinned here. Yeah, I guess they don't have it pinned anymore. But they had it pinned here. And they literally had a pinned tweet that literally said, Pokémon Legends ZA entirely set within Lumio City. That's enough proof that we're going to be in just Lumio City. Don't need much else than that. But nonetheless, though, I think it's interesting just that, we're seeing Corocoro again. I think it's fun. Again, even if it doesn't confirm jack shit, it's just fun to talk about, okay? We haven't had anything fun to talk about in a while. We have no news. We're now... basically, we're all of March, half of April away from the original reveal of Legends ZA. We have since had 0 actual information. We're just waiting for new stuff. And I think we're all starved for information. There is just nothing to talk about, man. But that's why we're going to move on to the next topic, which is going to be this post right here by Bun, Godmaster Bun, who says, here's why I think that Pokemon Legends ZA is most likely going to release in March 2025. Using the trading card games as an evidence, here's a mega thread. So, they start off. Now, I would point out, and this is something that Jan said to me, so shout out to Jan for actually pointing this out as well. This person, so Bun, shout out to Bun, by the way, amazing post. But Bun does use the English Pokemon cards, the English TCG releases, as for an example here. But keep in mind, Pokemon actually does also, release its card sets first in Japan. So Japan usually comes first. So you can't always look at the English ones to be a good indicator. But nonetheless, I think the TCG is a good indicator in general for Pokemon, for upcoming Pokemon things. So he says, some basic information on how the TCG set releases work. We normally get a new set released around every 3 months, with there being 4 main sets, excluding special sets, released each year. For this example, I'll be using the Sword and Shield series. So, Sword and Shield, right? I guess we had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, 4 sets per year, right? 4 sets per year, and that's supposed to cover those 3 years of a generation, right? So it's a total of what, 12 sets, more or less. So continuing, it says, each generation is divided into 3 sections. And like the video games, each generation in the TCG lasts 3 years. The first year normally is about introducing the new Pokemon from that generation and whether the new gimmick is level X, EX, GX, Vs, and EX, I guess, as well. The second year, so again, you guys know what these cards look like. If you've, bought any Pokemon cards, you know what the GX, VX, V, and, V-Star, V-Max, all that bullshit looks like. It says the second year adds a new classification based on the series' current gimmick, as well as whatever the next new game coming out next. So ORAS, Ultra Sun and Moon, and the expansion passes. The second year would include things like Prime Primal Forms, Ultra Beasts, Battle Styles, Paradox Pokemon, and Ace Specs. So yes, that is true as well. You got like Mega, Pokemon here. You got the Ultra Necrozma GX, Urshifu VMAX, and the Prime Catcher in this case. Moving on. The third year would be the final year of that generation, which, yes, Pokemon has stayed true to that like 3-year cycle. Now, I was talking to Jan, and we kind of like disagreed on the fact that I still think that next year is going to be Generation 10. And I know that Jan and a lot of people say that it's going to be in 2026 is going to be the next generation, just because that's the 30th anniversary of Pokemon, and that they would like to line it up and everything, which, yes, that could be the case. They could definitely do that. But at the same time, that means we'd be going a whole nother year without a release, and that means we're going to be on a 4-year cycle for a new Pokemon generation, which is fine and all, but keep in mind, that is the first time they will do that in, well, a very long time. They haven't done that since, well, what was actually the last time they did that? Because if you look at Pokemon releases, the last time they had a gap like that was before, like, Gen 5. Because if you look at Gen 5, for example, right? Like, if you look at, like, just look up Pokemon Black and White, for example. Let's see if we can, look that up real quick. Pokemon Black and White. Let's see. Actually, Pokemon all mainline release dates. So if we just look up all the mainline release dates here real quick, and we look at the Pokemon games. So if we look at like this. So, and again, we can't really look at these super old games because that's before like these formulas and these formats were set up. But like if we start from around like, I want to say Diamond and Pearl era, moving on forward. So Diamond and Pearl came out in like 2006 in Japan, 2007 in the rest of the world, or except South Korea, but about 2006, 2007, right? And then the next generation came out in 2010. So that was 2011 if you want to count. But if you count from the earliest being Japan, 2010, 2006, this is a 4-year cycle here. There's 4 years between. In that time frame, they only really filled in, like, we had 2006. There was nothing for, like, North America that year, or Europe. It was only in 2007 that we got it. And then in 2008, Japan got it again. So there's about 2 years between these. But then starting from Black and White is where I think this kind of new formula starts happening, right? So 2010, Black and White. 3 years later, in 2013, you have X and Y. And again, I'm only looking at the new generations, right? So Black and White's a new gen, X and Y is a new gen, right? I don't count the remake, so that's not a new gen game. However, moving on, 3 years later, Sun and Moon, new gen, right? 3 years later, 2019, Sword and Shield, a new gen. 3 years later, Scarlet and Violet, new gen. They have been doing this formula now since Black and White. Like, since Black and White, it's been 3 years, new generation. 3 years, new generation. 3 years, new generation. Like, they don't seem to go away from that formula. That still stays true, even here at X and Y. So what they usually do is, if they're not going to be releasing a new gen in that year, if they're going to be releasing a game in that year, they just skip it. That's what they did here. So we had a game for example, we had a game in 2013, that was X and Y. The year after that, in 2014, we had Oras. But then in 2015, we had no game. Normally, 2015 today, if we had the 2015 situation today, that would be DLC, right? That would be either DLC or the remakes or a Legends game, right? That would fill in that spot now, right? To make sure we have a game every year. Then Sun and Moon came out in 2016, right? So 2015, there was nothing. 2016, exactly 3 years after X and Y, we had the new generation. And this also came out on the 20th anniversary of Pokemon. Like 20 years of Pokemon is when this released in 2016, Sun and Moon. Moving on, 2017, the year right after it, we had Ultra Sun and Moon. And then the next generation, so again, you guys can see how they're listed. All this orange stuff here, this is specifically Generation 7, right? And then this is all Generation 6, Generation 5, Generation 4, Generation 3, Generation 2, Generation 1, right? So in all the colored ones, you can tell which is which, right? So then following up 2017, we had, like I said, a bit of a remake, off game, kind of a side game, right? Which was in 2018 with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Again, 3-year cycle, because in 2019, 3 years after 2016, right? So 3 years after, in 2019, we had the next generation, which was Sword and Shield. Followed up the year after with the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra in the same year of 2020. So this is literally the next year, which was the thing to fill in the gap. And then following that up in 2021 with, of course, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. And then, of course, also the Legends RCS game, which was, again, really out of place. This is really weird when this happened because we got 2 games in, like, 1 year, which was 2022. But guess what? 2022, even though there was a Legends game, this is what I mean, right? Because people are like, oh, no, they can't do a Generation 10 next year. Of course they can. Just because the anniversary is happening a year after that, I still don't think that necessarily means much. Sure, would it be a good idea for them to line up the 30th anniversary with the release of the 10th generation? Of course, that would actually be really smart. If you really think about it, that wouldn't be that crazy. And maybe it's time for a gap year. Maybe it's time for a year to take a break and, and skip over to the next year. Actually, that makes sense. But that doesn't necessarily guarantee it. Again, we're just speculating on this stuff, which is what I'm also saying. I'm also speculating. I don't know shit, technically, about when they're going to be releasing that stuff. But keep in mind, 2022 had 2 games. One from the previous gen and a brand new generation, right? So we had 2 games there. So they could easily do that next year too, because next year is going to be 3 years since this came out, right? So 2022, what happens 3 years later? Well, we're in 2025. So right, we'd be in 2025 3 years later. That's next year, right? And we already know one game for next year, which is Legends ZA. But guess what? There's another game that also came out in a previous, that also came out from a previous generation, exactly the same, which was Legends Arceus. They already did this once. They've done this before. This is what I mean, as in, this still can happen because they've done this previously. It's not that crazy to believe. Because guess what? They did it. 2022, then in 2023, we had the TLC to fill in the gap. That's basically the 3rd version game, like Platinum or Emerald. And then, guess what? The final game, to finish things up was supposed to be this year, but it doesn't happen. It was instead in 2025. So we have nothing for this year, right? Which means we have a gap of this year almost, right? Instead, the game is pushed to 2025, which does that mean that everything gets pushed? Does that mean the next generation gets pushed forward a year so that this year can be just a working year? Maybe. Again, maybe, highly possible. But let's see what they actually have to say in the rest of this post. So to say, the 3rd year would be the final year of the generation. This would receive one more new gimmick to round out the series. For X and Y, we got Break Evolutions. For Sun and Moon, we got Tag Teams. And for Sword and Shield, we got V-Stars. So yes, I still remember these Break cards. And also the Tag Team cards as well. And the V-Star cards, man, because I had a bunch of those Arceuses. Oh, jeez. But either way, that is true, though. Now, they say here that Scarlet and Violet series is almost halfway done. We currently are on the 5th set and in the set's 2nd year. Our next set will be based on the Teal Mask, followed by a set based on Terrapagos and the Stellar type. Our last set should be based on Dragon types, which you guys already know, the Temporal Forces, and then Twilight Masquerade, which I think is coming out in August, if I'm not mistaken. So, rumored Stella Miracle set slated for July 2024, and starter set Terra type Stella, Surge EX, and Stella Sylveon EX coming in August. Yeah, I thought so. 2024. Right. So, moving on. The starter Scarlet and Violet last 4 sets should be in February or March of 2025. We still don't know what Scarlet and Violet's last gimmick will be. The same way V-Stars were based on Legends Arceus, it's safe to assume that their last 4 sets will be based on Legends ZA. Okay. Scarlet and Violet has been all about returning mechanics. Instead of introducing a new type of card, they brought back Pokemon EX from Gen 3. Instead of just focusing on Paradox Pokemon, they brought back Ace Specs from Gen 5, which, the EX cards, right? They brought that back. And then, of course, the Ace Spec ones, they're back here again. So yeah, they seem to have repeated stuff. It's safe to assume that last 4 sets will be based on Pokemon Legends ZA, and what's a huge selling point about the game, Mega Evolutions are returning. Since Scarlet and Violet is all about returning gimmicks, Mega Evolution will be more than likely returning to the TCG too. Which, yeah, that actually makes total sense. The Mega cards were really sick, by the way. Those are some of the best Pokemon cards. They were so freaking cool, man. So I'm actually excited if they do return. And Scarlet and Violet's last 4 sets, which are presumably based on Legends EA, and the return of Mega Evolution will likely start releasing by February and March of 2025. Therefore, Pokemon Legends EA releasing early 2025 makes sense given the release schedule of the TCG. I'd also like to point out that the Sword and Shield's 3rd year started. We got Brilliant Stars in February 2022, while Legends Arceus released in January 2022. Despite not introducing Hisuian Pokemon, this introductory set gave us the brand new V-Star gimmick and focused on Arceus, which is true. So and honestly, again, I know Jan did tell me, oh yeah, but keep in mind the Japanese sets do come out at a different time. Sure, but at the same time, I do think, okay, so let's do it like this. If the expected date from Bun is March, then the logical date based on the Japanese sets, which usually come out 1 to 2 months earlier, should be January to February, which actually makes sense, right? Unless there's a delay or they push it back a bit to make sure, just push it back in a sense to have it in March or April. Honestly, does it really make that much of a difference? Not really. January, February, March, April, whichever one of them it is, it doesn't really matter because that's still early. That's still the first, if it's between January and March, it's still the first quarter of that next year. So that would honestly be pretty fine. It just would be weird because they only really said releasing simultaneously worldwide 2025. Never actually said, early 2025, late 2025, nothing like that. It's just, they just said simultaneously, and that's it. But yeah, nonetheless, though, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much it. So I would love to know again what you guys think about this. Again, Corocoro, not really much to say about this right now. There's not really much of new information here. And again, if this stuff is mistranslated, then yeah, we don't really have much of information to work with. The only really things we know is like what Jan said here. Like the actual stuff that we do know is these 2 points. The lore of the Mega Evolutions will be explored again, and Corocoro points out similarities to Zygarde in the game logo. So again, that's really about the only thing we know. And if Pokisutami is correct, though, about the fact that they said that this is very curious and let's wait for further news, then yeah, we'll just have to wait and see if there are further news happening anytime soon. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for today. Thank you all for watching. I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace out and bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.